Our last speaker of this segment, before we take a quick break, has come all the way from India. You all met her during opening remarks. Ivy is currently pursuing her MBA at the Indian School of Business. As the Vice President of the Energy and Sustainability Club there, she's been a passionate advocate for sustainable energy solutions. Prior to joining ISB, Ivy worked in the renewable energy sector, starting as a product manager with Vikram Solar, a solar module manufacturing firm. Subsequently, she transitioned to Enphase Energy to work on the home energy management system. Outside of work, she is a big-time travel enthusiast and has experience in sustainable tourism startups. Please welcome Ivy.
From every angle, there's no doubt. The poetry, emotion, coast to coast, and rub it in your skin like lotion.
Thank you, Anandi, for the introduction. A very, very good morning to one and all present. It is so heartwarming for me to be in a room full of such incredible, incredible women. And by the time I finish my story, you will see why it means so much to me. I'll start with a small story. 2016, 8 o'clock, on a chilly December morning. It was the first day of our campus placements. The HR of a global industrial manufacturing firm walks in and announces, "Women candidates will not be considered. We are so sorry for the inconvenience." I yawned, my morning sleep more hurt than my feminism at this point. But I looked around to see my male batchmates, who were just my batchmates till about a moment ago. So incidents like this, at the very onset of your career, tend to leave a long-lasting impression on our minds. For me, it was the first implant of the thought that maybe manufacturing firms are not a woman's place to be in. Fast forward to 2018, I just finished my master's from one of the best engineering colleges in India in material science, and I was about to join a solar module manufacturing firm as a product manager, which was posted at the Special Economic Zone at the end of West Bengal in India. Coming from a STEM background, my entire educational journey and my workplaces as well have been fraught with a glaring gender imbalance all throughout my life, with men outnumbering women in almost all my study groups, friend circles, and teams alike. But these are people, I tell you, who are from privileged walks of life, with whom I've had multiple discussions on gender disparity, women inclusivity, and so on. But whatever experiences I've had at this workplace were a totally different ballgame altogether. Today, I'm here to share 3 of such personal experiences that I've had here. My first reality check came from the stark difference in the kind of workplace I had in my mind and the actuality of it. The office was located at the Special Economic Zone, which was around 2.5 hours journey from where I used to stay. My male colleagues could stay near to the plant because it was convenient for them, but for a young 24-year-old girl, it was not safe, and the locality was not conducive for me to stay all by myself there. So every morning I would wake up, dress up like a corporate employee, and then go through the whole journey of 2.5 hours in potholed roads, factory pollution, and by the time I would reach office, I would end up looking like this. So completely disheveled from the journey, with barely any time to freshen up before my 9:30 a.m. production team meeting. I get it. It doesn't sound like quite a struggle per se, but imagine waking up and going to office every day like this and starting your day on that note. It certainly wasn't the foundation for a positive work day ahead. Reality check number 2. Being the only woman in the manufacturing floor meant that I could be very, very easily singled out. Almost after having survived for a week there, my manager calls me up and tells me that he has received a few complaints from the operators in the shop floor. The complaint was about the fact that there were a few loose strands of hair on the shop floor and some assembly lines. So no brownie points for guessing whose hair it was. I said sorry, even though hair fall is not a problem that any woman has ever mastered. But I didn't know what to say. I had also used the hair caps that were given to me, even though I could only fit so much into those short hair caps, which are basically meant for men. So I said that I'll take care of the situation, and I left. Third reality check. How many of you remember this scene from Friends? Please raise your hand if you do. Oh, okay, I see a lot of you. So for the uninitiated, Rachel is a non-smoker herself, but she enters the smoking zone just to be a part of the work-related conversations that were happening there between her boss and her colleagues. I'll tell you how I related with it. So, like I said, I was the only woman in the manufacturing floor, and even though solar module manufacturing is a purely design-driven process with no physical exhaustion as such, it was entirely, the entire shop floor was led by men who were all 40-year-old, and getting them to accept suggestions or maybe answer queries of a 24-year-old at that point of time proved to be an uphill battle. And during our probation period, all of us, all the new recruits, including my male colleagues, were tasked with understanding the nuances of the manufacturing process so that we could identify the bottlenecks and improve the overall shop floor productivity. Very slowly, I found out that they were way more updated. My male colleagues were way more updated about the nuances of the process than I was. They knew which export modules we were building, why is the laminator down 30 minutes yesterday, which gold modules do we use for calibration, so on and so forth. And I realized what was the source of this breaks, of this information? Smoke breaks with the operators. And unlike what Rachel did there, if you look at the AI-generated picture here, you will get a sense of the cultural context that I'm talking about, how awkward it gets for me to go out on a smoke break with them and get more information. So those are the three stories that I wanted to share. And I get it. They do not quite qualify as struggle because Oxford Dictionary demands some sort of, violent action, restraint, constriction, so on and so forth. And there weren't any. There was no violence, there was no discomfort at all in terms of the definition that Oxford says. What there was, however, was a very prominent gender gap. There was a very prominent age gap because the operators were almost 40-ish and I was just a fresher and they were all seasoned workers in that space. And there was a very complicated power dynamics because they were not really reporting to me, so I could not get them obligated to answer my questions. And neither could I exert any sort of authority on them to, make them feel like they're supposed to answer my questions and take my suggestions. So when you put all of this together for a fresher who has just entered the industry and trying to make a mark for herself, you'll realize that all these issues compounded, making me feel like I'm a complete loser day in and day out, without being able to do anything that I was supposed to be doing in the work. So slowly, now that I look back in retrospect, I realize there are certain things I started doing differently to make sure that I could adapt to the situation. For example, I cut my hair short, which seemed to be the source of a lot of problems that I had faced in that company. And I ordered myself shower caps from Amazon, because that's the only big cap that we could get for ourselves. I also stopped asking questions. I realized that I do not need to pull a Hermione Granger here. There are no class participation points or an appraisal at stake. I did not need to tell the operators how inquisitive I am or interested in the process. So I would just stay mute for like 90% of the time when I was on the shop floor and observe the process. And then maybe just collate all my questions and ask a few targeted questions to them so that, the whole negligence and the awkwardness part of it could be reduced to a bare minimum. And I realized that this was a place which was more focused on likability. So if I can get them to like me, they will be able to answer my questions. So instead of pure professionalism, I started to talk to them in vernacular languages. I started to talk to them on a domestic, deeper connection level, where I could talk to them about their personal lives as well, so that, once you connect with them, you have a better shot at getting more information out of the process. So slowly and subtly, like all struggles, this too did pass. These are the stories that I thought of sharing when I had submitted my application for the WCS Talks. But last week, when I was drafting the presentation, I realized that maybe these are not the problems that we should be talking about. Today, as a 29-year-old who has navigated almost 5 years in the manufacturing maze, the last 5 years of exposure, privilege, growth, maturity, today gives me the confidence to stand here in front of you and tell you that these are not the problems we should be talking about. The real problem lies here. The real problem is against a system that has made us believe that we are supposed to change ourselves to be able to fit in. The real problem lies against a system where they have normalized the concept of changing ourselves to be able to conform to the systemic social expectations that have been there for ages. And that is the narrative we should be talking about. If you go by stats, you'll see, thank you. If you look at all my solutions, you'll see they're more of an individual coping mechanism than a solution to the problem in hand. So this problem is, the stats, if you look at World Economic Forum stats, they say that only 30% of the workforce in the manufacturing field are led by women, with a very lopsided distribution across different levels. So the key to this problem could be in two ways. First is representation, which is very, very important, especially in such male-dominated places. And second would be distribution, an equal distribution across different levels. And I do not just mean C-suite levels, because once you have more people, more women in the entry-level positions, you'll have a better recognition of the struggles that we are talking about. And once you have more representation of women in the senior level positions, you'll have more power to address the struggles that we have been facing. So the only key to this solution would be to have a uniform representation all throughout. And I tell you, things are changing today. Conversations have become way more nuanced. Now I'm studying in a leading B school in India, where there are 600 of us studying and learning from each other in a very, very equal space. And I would want to believe that someday soon, we'll all become leaders, and the scales are going to tip. And I would like to believe that once we get there, we will be able to bring certain changes for all the incumbents who are trying to enter our industries. On that note, it's a positive hope. And like all positive and good things like hope, it should never die. On that note, I'd like to end the talk. Thank you so much.